have a couple more folks who are going to be joining us. They should be here any minute.
The webinar started, so our mics are live. We're just we'll wait just a little bit here, see if we can grab a couple more folks. They at the beginning of the presentation, Cassie, or?
No, we can go ahead and get started. And I'm assuming, oh, there's Gwen
Gwen.
right now. And I'm assuming more will join as we get started.
Okay.
Perfect.
So I'll start. Is that okay, Dave? Cassie?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening. We are going to begin the work session at 5:30 sharp. And Cassie will discuss the behavioral health and wellness first semester update. So Cassie, go ahead. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I will try to share my screen here. All right, is that working? Can everybody see that okay? All right, wonderful. I just want to start with thank you for allowing us to be here today and talk about kind of what we're experiencing in schools currently in terms of behavioral health and wellness. Oh, let me see if I can. Oh. There we go. Before we get started, I just want to recognize the people who will be here tonight with us discussing behavioral health and wellness. Just a really wonderful group of professionals, and every single person that I reached out to asking if they wanted to participate tonight jumped at the chance, even with everything going on in our school buildings currently. I probably could have had twice or 3 times as many folks here tonight because they're all really passionate about students and behavioral health and wellness. So tonight we'll be hearing from Christina, who's our student success coach, K-8. We'll be hearing from Gwen, one of our school counselors at Tom McCall, Catherine, one of our school counselors at the high school, Hannah, who's our mental health care coordinator at the 9 through 12 level, and myself, district coordinator of behavioral health and wellness. This is just a brief overview of the subjects we'll be touching on tonight. We have a lot more data, believe it or not, available than what you'll see at the slideshow. We're happy to share that out at anybody's request. We're also really hoping, given that this is a work session, that as we go through, please feel free to unmute at every time and ask for questions, clarifications, any comments you have. We really welcome those this evening. To center ourselves before we begin tonight, we wanted to point out that everything you'll hear about here tonight is developed through the lens of ODE's integrated model of mental health and well-being. So everything we look at integrating into district should be trauma-informed, should be SEL-driven, should be strengths-based, and equity-centered. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Christina Meinicke for an update on student success coaching.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Christina Meinicke. I am one of our district student success coaches, and I just first want to say thank you so much for having us here this evening. And I just am going to give you an overview of the work that we have been doing this year. First of all, I'm excited to just remind you that we have 2 student success coaches this year. We have myself and Christine Dabbs. And this semester, our focus has really been on continuing the work that we have done in the past, but then also expansion. So at the pre-K 4 levels, we've really been working hard on PACS implementation, which is what we call an integrated model. So integrating social emotional learning within other instruction, and then also direct instruction within community circle time that each of our elementary schools have designated for the development of social emotional learning skills. 5th through 8th grade, which is the area of greatest expansion this year, we've really been focused on developing systems and even systems within the systems they already had, along with that social emotional learning and academic integration. How do we take strategies that we know to build social emotional learning skills within the academic time and integrate so that we are constantly helping our skills and ourselves as adults, or our students and the adults build their skill. And a big part of that is really working on common language and vocabulary. and that is 5th through 8th grade. And then for all students and staff, our biggest focus of the year has been supporting the return to in-person. And that continues as we see times where we might need to have a group take a pause and come back. So we're really developing a lot of resources and supports to help when we're coming back to in-person instruction, or when students might have to be on quarantine or be out. And then our other biggest focus has been the social emotional learning signature practices, and that's at all areas and all levels. Thanks, Cassie. We didn't work out a cue, so I was like, so a lot of times we get asked with coaching, what do you do on your day-to-day? What does it truly look like? And we thought it would be nice to just point out to all of you our daily, weekly, and monthly support. So every day as student success coaches, we are in classrooms coaching using Jim Knight's research-based impact cycle. And every week, we send out a pre-K 4 and then a 5-8 newsletter in which staff subscribe to that. We send out resources. We piggyback on the things that we know are needs for students. And we have a systematic routine to ensure that we're meeting those needs and that we can get feedback from staff. We also oftentimes help participate in CIT at buildings. I do want to note this year that time has been a lot less than years past, because the focus during CIT time has been to really provide more time for staff to have planning and to work with their PLCs, or just to like catch up. So we've had to do a few other things and make some adjustments there, which then leads us to our monthly. So both Christine and I, we run a monthly new teacher mentoring program. She does the pre-K 4 and I do a 5-6 group. We don't have that yet for 7-8. That'll be something probably in the future. And our focus is really how can we support our new teachers and provide a space for them to build a network among themselves. That's probably our biggest outcome, is that those teachers, and it's new to the district, not just new to teaching. So teachers who are new to the district, our biggest focus is for them to build a network within themselves so that they have support beyond just our coaches or instructional facilitators. And then we also have, I think probably one of the things that I'm proudest of system in place is we have pre-K 8 now an SEL partner team. So we have a pre-K 4 team that focuses on PACs. We call them our PACs partners. And then we have a 5-8 SEL team that meets once a month. And when we are meeting, we develop strategies, we look at data, we determine what are the needs and how best for that team to meet those needs. Any questions on any of that? Okay, that kind of jumps into what are the levels of support that we provide. So we provide individual support, which is by request, and that is really focused on coaching. We do some mentoring, but most of our work, the majority of our work that is individual, is coaching. And you can see by the graphs on the side that Christine and I spend 76, I would say most of the time it's even more than that, over 75% of our time is spent in classrooms with teachers or staff members working on strategies that they have chosen. And within our building time, we're doing CITs. We are a part of all of our building support or behavior support teams. We attend meetings for PBIS, climate and culture, our behavior trend team at NAMS. We work with our SEL partners. We also attend CASA meetings at Tom McCall and our house meetings at NAMS. And then another big thing that was just like, I wasn't sure where to put this, but we do a lot of work with our bus drivers. It's one of our number one, I will just say it, areas of need right now. And so we do support our bus drivers. And then at the district level, we have the opportunity often to collaborate with others to provide professional development and really work on things like community circle or direct instruction. We also coordinate the resources that go out for some social emotional learning. And right now, one of our big keys is the vertical alignment. So with the expansion to 5-8, we're really focused on how do we ensure that what we're doing in our elementaries aligns across the elementaries, but also how does that help transfer to Tomahawk and then NAMS, and making sure that we're meeting the needs of our students while at the same time providing resources to our staff members and ensuring that we're meeting their needs. And then the other big component that we have supported and are continuing to do work on is, I'm really proud to say that we now have a common referral form pre-K 8, which allows us to really collect information and look at the data and identify trends, and also identify what are the strategies that we know are impacting those needs that we can see from a referral. And that includes communicating and working with buildings on, like, what is the purpose of a referral form, and how do we use this to identify needs and the skills that students are lagging, and then moving forward. Brad.
Yeah, Christina, other than the referral form system data, what other data are you using to drive your actions in terms of making progress? You're smiling. Did you know that question was coming?
I was just going to say, I'm so happy that you asked that. Brad, I don't think, thank you for asking that. I don't think that there's anything, quite honestly, that we do within our coaching realm that we do not collect data for. So for example, we keep a time study. Christine and I keep a time study where we are really tracking, like, who are we working with? How often are we in each building? But when you're talking about like referral form, one of the biggest things, the impact cycle coaching, the research-based method, the first thing that we start with is data collection. And I know I'm going to show you some data on that here in a few minutes, but every single coaching cycle that we are in, the first thing we do is we collect baseline data that is driven by student need and teacher input. So the teacher drives that, and then we take data systematically or periodically so that we can really show, like, are these strategies having the impact that we want? And if not, why, like, what do we need to adjust? That includes things like, for example, today I did a data collection on transitions, like how much time was it taking students to get into class and get their materials out. It also includes things on like student engagement, how many students are raising their hand, who's answering questions. So basically everything that we do, we collect data so that we can make decisions based on that information. And Cassie's pushing me on, which is great because I can show you a few more things. So this is really specific, some of the data as coaches that we keep track of. So right now, between the two of us, Christine and I have 39 educators currently in a coaching cycle. And the biggest reason why I want to make sure we say educators, you're going to see here, like, we coach all staff, right? And it is something that they request. So when they request it, sorry, Cassie. So when they request it, we like follow up. Cassie, can you go back one for me? Thanks. So far this year, well, as of January 14th, we had 48 educators who participated in a coaching cycle. And through that work, we've had 75 student-focused goals met. Our number one area of goals met was participation or engagement. And then our second was transition or time on task. Then we had assignment completion. And I will say specifically in the last probably 2 months, I've had a lot more teachers reach out and set goals on attendance, including very specifically tardies at Neil Armstrong. So that really is how our data drives into it. And then we've had 32 other teachers receive one-on-one support that's outside of the other things that I mentioned. That doesn't include like our mentoring or those other pieces. And the 32 educators that have reached or that are getting support outside of coaching, part of that is, quite honestly, we're at capacity. We cannot take on any more coaching cycles right now. And some of it is meeting educators where they are. Cassie, if you can, thank you.
Yeah, Narcy, did you have your hand raised?
Sorry.
I did, but right now we're focusing on the elementary school, not necessarily the high school, correct?
That's correct. Currently, we only offer student success coaching K through 8, and this is the first year that we've rolled up to grades 5 through 8.
Okay. I'll just hold my question for later until I, listen some more.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Cassie. I can't see everyone, so yeah, please just chime in. This just kind of sums up a few of the things that we already talked about. We thought it was very important, and I wanted to make sure that you saw, like, where do we spend our time? So when you see on the graph on the top left, the coaching identify, coaching improve, and coaching learn, this is how Christine and I really, when we meet and we talk about how things are going, we focus on this because identify, improve, and learn are the 3 stages of the impact cycle. And so we really want to make sure that those 3 together are the biggest piece of the pie. You can see some of the other things and where we're spending our time: mentoring, coaching and learning, putting on PDs, getting PD. I do want to make sure that I also mention that Christine and I have had the opportunity to attend a 16-week course this year on impact cycle. So we also acknowledge that we need to be continuous learners in the impact cycle so that we can better our practice on how are we collecting data, how are we setting goals, how are we ensuring that we're meeting teacher and student needs. And we also do this by having needs assessments, we have feedback forms, and then we collect a lot of data every single week. And you can see on the bottom, just the majority of our time is spent with individual educators. And so that gets us to, like, how do we know how we're doing? And this is something that I think I'm most excited about to present, because last year when we came, we talked about this was one of our next steps, and now it's in place. So we have a coaching feedback form that we gave last week. We were planning at the end of the semester, and these are some of the key components that we wanted to make sure that we shared. So you can see on the top, our overall feedback, 80% of the teachers who responded, which was 32, they're telling us, like, this is really impactful to them. And the bottom two really show you, like, what is the impact. And I think the one that stood out the most to Christine and I when we were looking over this data is, if you look at the bottom right, where it says, what are the following parts of the impact cycle do you find most impactful? The data collection. Like, data collection and regular meetings. That was really key to us, because data collection is something pretty new if you're not in a coaching cycle. And so we're realizing, like, teachers really, they use this, they want it, they ask for it. And so this is helping us drive our decisions. And on the left, you can see the areas that teachers have chosen to have coaching support in from a student success coach, which then leads us to the next piece, and that is, while our data we're happy with, I don't want it to come across that there aren't challenges this year. Like, there's a lot of work to be done, and we have a lot of challenges. And when we asked our educators, what's the biggest challenge? Time was our biggest thing, especially just being very upfront and honest. When we have to cancel or reschedule due to covering classes and things coming up, that's really difficult for teachers. For example, tomorrow I have the opportunity to cover a classroom, which on one hand is really, really great. It's a great experience for me. On the other hand, that means that I'm canceling 11 appointments with teachers, including 5 data collections and 4 opportunities to co-facilitate and co-teach with them. It's something that we want to make sure that we're making known, and it's something that we're taking in. And it's also one of those pieces that we're really working hard on. How do we continue to meet the needs with knowing that time is a challenge? And then the second piece that we wanted to make sure I mentioned was, we asked them, like, what's the most impactful part? And you saw it, being able to collaborate specifically on a schedule, and then being able to have data collected. I always tell teachers and educators, my biggest job is to do the things that you would do if you had the time to do them. So what data would you collect if you had time? Because you don't have time to stand with a stopwatch. You don't have that. So that's my role, And then we collaborate and they choose the strategies and they choose the goal and we move from there. And I love this quote. This is from a teacher that just said, you know, the validation is one of the biggest keys. And then I'm not going to read all of this to you, but we did ask them, like, if you had the opportunity to talk to a colleague about student success coaching, what would you say? And I have to be honest, one of my favorite is that last one, be like Nike, just do it. And that's the feedback that we're getting, that working with a coach is really helping in the way that it is intended to. It's helping teachers to continue to develop skill, and it's a collaborative process. It's not oh, you're doing something wrong or there's something that's not going well in your classroom. It's every single teacher deserves a coach. Every single educator deserves a coach. And that's the feedback that we're getting from them. If you want to see more of this data, we're more than happy to share all of it with you. This was done anonymously so that we could make sure that educators could really answer and give us true feedback. Any questions before I jump into the last couple of pieces? Okay, so as I mentioned, right, we have challenges and we want to make sure that we're recognizing our challenges. The first one is time. Right now, Christina and I both have waiting lists. The demand is greater than what we're able to sustain. And I think the biggest key for that is that we want to make sure that we're doing a great job. And so we have put that waiting list into place so that we can ensure that anyone that's working with us, we can give them our best and trying not to spread ourselves too thin. That also goes with the second one, which is consistency, right? And I think we all agree that consistency is a key. And so that's a challenge that we're working through. Part of the piece that we're working through with the time and consistency is also coordination of support. We've had the amazing opportunity to expand not just student success coaching this year, but coaching in English language arts and language development. And so that is one of our current challenges. That is both a challenge and a piece that I feel like is an opportunity for amazing growth. How do we coordinate with each other as coaches so that we can make sure that we're providing support to all those who would like it in the areas that they are requesting the support? And then I think the other challenge that we face that we're really working hard on is how do we continue to build new systems within the old systems, especially in a year that is stressful beyond what anyone could ever imagine. So we don't want to just throw out the old. We know that that's not how success happens, but that challenge of how do we make adjustments and integrate our new systems with our old systems to ensure that we have students at the focus at all times and that we're meeting their needs while not overwhelming our staff. And so then what are our next steps? Few things that we have just on the agenda right now. We're analyzing the feedback because we just gathered that last week and we're going to make adjustments. We also are continuing to develop systems for how do we support when the demand is greater than our capacity. And part of that is working with our other coaches. And you see that next, like continuing to collaborate with our other instructional coaches. And I will say that's also a piece that I know that they would say is difficult when we're being pulled to cover classrooms. Time you're going to hear all the time is a challenge. And I think that's a challenge for our work in all facets. And then our last next step is data collection. I mentioned before, we basically don't do anything unless there's a way for us to collect some data to ensure that our decisions are being made based on that data. And we're continuing to learn as we go and reach out to gym nights and others so that we can not just collect data, but really learn how to collect data in a manner that is meaningful and powerful. And how can we continue to better that process so that we're being more impactful for our teachers and thus impacting students and ensuring that we're meeting their needs.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christina. Does anybody have any student success coaching specific questions before we move on to our next topic? Related topic, but different topic. Okay. So next up, we have social and emotional learning. And while student success coaching is a huge component of our district's kind of overall social and emotional learning, it's not just our student success coaches that are engaging in social emotional learning in the district. It's a team that involves everybody who works in district. It's all district staff, it's teachers, it's classified staff, it's our school counselors, it's our mental health care coordinators. So we wanted to take a minute just to talk about overall, where are we currently with social emotional learning in district and where are we heading? And I believe it is Christina and Catherine that are going to share out about pre-K 4, 5, 8, and 9 through 12.
Yeah, I know you all thought you were done with me, but sorry, you weren't, not quite yet. For our social emotional learning pre-K 4, we talked about this a little bit before, but our biggest focus is welcoming students back. And within that, we collaborate. We have the opportunity, and this is actually pre-K 8, we work with our counselors, we work with our care coordinators, we are ensuring deans of students, our admin, teachers, that a big focus for the social emotional learning component is that collaboration, which helps us to ensure that any of the programs you see, for example, 5-8, second step collaborative problem solving, that those programs are being integrated in a collaborative way, and that we're using all of the supports that we have within our current system to ensure that we're meeting student needs. I also wanted to make sure that we mentioned a big part of the work that we're doing pre-K 4 is our social emotional learning survey pilot. So we are using a program called Panorama, and we have been working at Joseph Gale Elementary School, and all 3rd and 4th graders have the opportunity to take a survey. And so expanding that and working through that has also been a big key this year, along with, you see on the 5-8, the SEL signature practices. And I think Catherine's going to talk a little more about that.
Sure am, if I could find that unmute button, because we haven't been on Zoom enough lately. I'm a little rusty, I guess. Yeah, I'm Catherine Davis. I'm one of the counselors at the high school, and similar to 5 through 8, we are also using our SEL signature practices handbook, and one of our big focuses similarly is just welcoming students back into the building, especially, for us at the secondary level, they're large buildings. And so I think our teachers and our staff have done a phenomenal job of welcoming students at just about every door. If you walk in to the high school in the morning, you'll see our campus staff welcoming students at the door. You'll see teachers at the doors. And then we've made a really intentional focus for our grade 9 students. All grade 9 students have to take a class called either High School Success or AVID. And we've been very intentionally embedding those practices there. It's been really fun to see those kids participate in those.
Okay, and then our next steps, really you see them here, but I think the 2 biggest keys for the social emotional learning component is, I mentioned just a little bit that social emotional learning survey that we have been piloting. And our biggest next step is next year we'll be expanding that to other buildings. And so that means that we'll be expanding the opportunity for students to take a survey that provides very specific information based on the core competencies that we then use to make decisions about core implementation, but also supports on the tier 2 level. With that, we are working really hard in our 5-8 for next steps on collaborative problem solving. We'll be doing a training with collaborative problem solving in this coming summer. And we're using our 5-8 SEL partner team to continue to build the structures of support and systems for that collaborative problem solving and expansion as we get there for the survey. We also really are working hard at the 5-6 level to collaborate on, we have an SEL lesson time now at Common Call. And so the counselors and myself have been working hard to just make sure that we are aligning their guidance lessons with the work that's being done by teachers on a weekly basis. And that's something we'll continue to do.
And then I can just speak really quickly to the 9 through 12. Next steps for social and emotional learning. We actually just had the opportunity to meet this week with some representatives from the high school, and we're looking forward to bringing more professional development around collaborative problem solving and the lens of lagging skills for student behavior to the high school, along with more support around social emotional learning signature practices. Next up, we have school counseling.
Wonderful. Well, good evening. I'm Gwen Torson, formerly Gwen Ashcraft, the same person. I'm excited to be here tonight. Thank you for having us, and thank you for giving us some time to share the fun work and the powerful work that we're doing across the district. So we're going to focus on first semester this year. We're beyond happy and over the moon that we have onboarded more school counselors in Forest Grove School District, and we're providing support through mentorship that is assigned not only to brand new counselors that just graduated with their masters, but also new counselors that might have 1 or 2 or even up to 3 years of experience, but new to Forest Grove School District. We're also focusing on providing Tier 1 and Tier 2 supports, especially in the area of social and emotional wellness. And more than ever, we're providing Tier 3 supports and interventions for students experiencing mental health crises. In addition, we are tracking and responding to academic and attendance data, which Christina touched on as well, which includes tardies. Cassie, can you go back 1 slide? Thank you. So all standards and goals that school counselors in our district work on are based off of ASCA, which stands for the American School Counseling Association, OSCA, the Oregon School Counseling Association, the Oregon Department of Ed, and then our Forest Grove School District Comprehensive Counseling Framework, which is derived directly from those sources. We have a time task analysis comparison that we're going to share with you tonight, going back to 2019, last year in CDL with some hybrid, and then thus far in 2021. Overall trends that you're going to see is that we're currently at or below the ASCA recommended ratio for counselor to student in the majority of our schools. Not in all, but we are closer than we have ever been in my 27 years in this district. We are also sharing information from 2019 because the 2020 data, as you are well aware, is somewhat skewed and not traditional because we were in CDL and then hybrid. And the time task analysis that I'm going to be sharing with you next is out of an October POP, which would look very different today in this place of the pandemic that we're in. So that's all contextual and looking at this information. So current budgeted school counselor caseloads as of the 14th of January are listed here on this grid. The ASCA recommended counselor caseload is 1 school counselor to 250 students. At Cornelius, for example, there is 1.5 counselors. The ratio there is 1 school counselor to 260 students. And in parentheses, this was the number of students in the building prior to the new hire. At Dilley, that school sits at 220 students. Last year was 230, so we're right at the mark on that and a little under. As Echo Shaw, for the first time ever in my career in Forest Grove School District, we have 2 counselors at Echo Shaw. Such great news. We've gone from 425 students to 1 school counselor to 197. At Fern Hill, we're sitting at about 250, right where ASCA recommends the ratio to be. At Joseph Gale, we've added a school counselor. Instead of Ms. Saunderson having 428 students, her caseload's at about 196. At Harvey Clark, we've added a second counselor with the current caseload at 238, where in prior years it was at about 440 students. At Tom McCall, I'm over the moon. For the first time in my career, we have 3 school counselors with our ratio at 246. Last year, we were at 349. And as a school counselor, I have been up to 825 students on my caseload over a period of over 3 years. And so the work that we can do with 250 students to 1 is pretty astounding. Neil Armstrong, we have 3 school counselors, 1 to 284, with last year being 429. And Forest Grove High School, we have 6 school counselors. The ratio is 306 students to 1 school counselor. However, due to a school counselor being needing to be on leave and not being able to find a licensed school counselor, the current ratio today is 367 students to 1 school counselor. And at Calc, we have 1 school counselor with the ratio 1 to 44. We also want to take time to share with the school board and the district office the huge appreciation in your focus on mental health for our students and our families and our overall community. There is a direct connect to the services that we can provide in-house for our constituents and outside of our schools. So thank you. I'm looking at this, this data sheet here. I'm going to have us focus for a minute just on the qualifiers, the 7 qualifiers at the bottom of the bar graph. I think it's really important that we understand what that bar graph is speaking to. And these are the competencies that ASCA and OSCA outlines. The first is core curriculum. The core curriculum consists of structured developmental lessons designed to assist students in achieving the desired competencies that focus on academic, career, personal, social, and global perspective. The next area is student planning, and this allows us to individually help students create personal and academic goals, as well as career planning. And we know there's so much more that goes into career planning than saying, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? We're unpacking biases and stereotypes, and that starts at a really young age. With responsive services, which is the 3rd category, these are activities designed to meet students' immediate needs and concerns. These are what we call more traditional old school counseling roles, often the ones that when we were going to high school, we would go to the office to visit with our school counselor, if we had school counselors. Next is referral collaboration. This is the referral work that we do with our amazing mental health care coordinators, which you're going to hear a little bit more from later on. It's the collaboration we do with outside private practices, therapists, centers in connecting our students and families to support or obtaining that release of information to maybe they're already connected, but to further refine the collaboration and connectedness between home and school. And we also, as school counselors, address physical health deterrents that get in the way of learning, vision, hearing, dental. So those are the main ways in which we connect through the referral collaboration. Under program management, this really is somewhat self-explanatory, but to give examples, this is professional development, consultation on program rollout, and Christina has mentioned that several times already, that connecting of how do we roll out overall programs through social emotional learning, positive behavior intervention supports, response to intervention, and then at each building, for example, our peer mediation program that goes across campus, which is a conflict resolution program, or our new student greeter program. So these are like whole school programs that school counselors take the lead on. And then after that, we have fair share, which really means that any other licensed employee would spend time in our schools doing these different roles. And then the last category is the ASCA category, which really is looking at roles and responsibilities that really are not connected to our training and licensure. For example, being a TAG facilitator or a 504 facilitator. That's not traditionally something that school counselors do. It is a role we take on, but that's not part of ASCA or OSCA. So now that we've gone through those, you're going to see these at each level. This happens to be the slide that is for our pre-K 4. The teal bar is ASCA's recommendation. The gold bar is the time task analysis that we just did in October. And then the middle is our last year in CDL, a very unusual, atypical year for us, which is why we combined the 2019 data. Before we move on to the next slide, and please jump in with any questions and you'll have time to really look at this data, you're going to notice that ASCA's recommendations vary by a level. So for example, with the younger years here at the elementary pre-K 4, you're going to notice the core curriculum's at 40%. When you get to the middle and high school, you're going to see that drop and you're going to see student planning go up. All right, thank you, Cassie. Next slide.
Yeah, and Narce, I see you have your hand raised. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. I made a note. For the current data that was shared with us a couple of slides ago in regards to the ratio, for example, the ratio 1 to 250. For the is this for elementary or high school or both?
It's for all. 1 to 250 is recommended for all levels.
Okay. My question was, how many of the counselors that we currently have reflect bilingualism and represent the ethnicity of the children?
I don't have that information off the top of my head, but I can get it during the course of this presentation. I can tell you we worked very hard in the spring to try to recruit bilingual, bicultural counselors. That was one of our main areas of focus. Any materials we generated for recruitment were both in English and Spanish. And we tried to reach out to, through a lot of different means to recruit school counselors. We were able to hire 2 new bilingual school counselors for our elementary school, which is not as many as we would like, just to be frank. We were happy to be able to hire 2 bilingual school counselors and 1 bilingual bicultural school counselor, but it is an area of need for our district, and we would be open to any feedback about how we could go about recruiting more bilingual bicultural school counselors.
Thank you, Cassie. The other question I had is, I noticed that Calc was listed. What about Create?
So I can speak to that briefly. Create is not a program within our district. It's one that we contract with, although our school counselors do still serve students at Create. And I know Catherine will jump in to tell me if I'm incorrect, but they stay on their homeschool counselor caseload during their time at Create.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. We'll probably go relatively quickly through these other data slides just in the interest of time this evening. Gwen, I don't know if there's any brief things that you wanted to say about Tom McCall in terms of data.
Not as much specific to Tom McCall, but more about the level. You'll notice the ASCA recommendations, and those will be shifting as we go to the middle school years. And there's Neil Armstrong, for example. If we look at that core curriculum, that's going to drop, and student planning and responsive services is going to go up. Developmentally for students, the thinking is the prevention proactives happened in the pre-K through 6, and so at the secondary level it shifts. And so then that would take us to the high school. Next slide. And you'll see that it continues to drop with the core curriculum, but continues to rise with the student planning.
Catherine, did you have anything you wanted to note about the high school level?
I think for both NAMS and the high school, it's a little bit different. At the secondary level, because our time is so seasonal. There are times when we're in classrooms all the time, doing all these lessons. There's time when we're sitting down and forecasting and planning with students. And I think just a couple of highlights that have stood out. Again, you might see some kind of wonky bars, and I think certainly for program management, shifting everything over to CDL like everybody else is reflected there. And then certainly we're experiencing much higher rates of referrals for students who are needing that additional support.
And I hope our main takeaway was sharing this data, and we have lots more if anybody's interested in seeing more,
Yeah.
is that we are a data-based counseling program, and that we are continuously trying to improve and ensure that we're aligned with best practices through our comprehensive school counseling plan and district. To that note, one thing that I really wanted to make sure we highlighted this evening during the presentation is that Forest Grove High School is now RAMP, and have Catherine have a couple minutes to explain what that is, because it's really exciting for our school district.
Thanks. Yeah. So RAMP is basically a designation given to schools that demonstrate that they are providing data-driven best practices in school counseling in 10 different domains. And so they call that being a recognized ASCA model program, or RAMP for short, because apparently school counselors love them acronyms. I've included just some of the highlights below that we submitted. And a special thank you to everyone who's served on our advisory council. I know several of you have here. Our advisory council meets twice a year, and we share our program goals and get feedback on the best way to implement them. And it's a really, really great mix of community members and students and teachers and parents. It's definitely a highlight for our whole team each year. We are currently the only high school in Oregon who has this designation. So it's been a pretty exciting year to be able to do this, and a lot of credit to the team of people that I get to work with, and our kids and our families there.
And I believe only one of maybe 5 programs in the state of Oregon, regardless of level, that is RAMP. So really exciting, and a lot of hard work on the high school's part. Now it's sending me back. So current challenges, how about I just start tackling this one, and then Catherine and Gwen, if you want to jump in. So just like with everywhere else, it's the impact of subbing in classrooms. It is all hands on deck. I know we've heard that a lot. We all absolutely believe it. And it just is a legitimate challenge that we're facing this year. A significant increase in mental health and behavioral needs as students have returned to school buildings. That's something we've noticed, and something you'll hear more about briefly in our suicide prevention section that's coming up. The impact of counselors out on leaves and lack of availability of long-term counseling subs has led to an increase at the high school counseling level. They haven't really felt the impact yet of an additional school counselor. And in this current year, I know that has been rough, but they've all been working really hard to cover for one another and get the students the support that they need. Also, the Calc counselor is teaching half-time at Calc, so I know that has kind of impacted maybe the ability to give some relief to the high school. And also I put this one in here because I wanted to recognize that the pandemic has meant increased stress for everybody. And that includes our counseling professionals. That includes all of our wonderful behavioral health folks in district who are such good listeners and oftentimes end up taking on a lot of that for staff. I just know it has an impact on them as well. And so there's been a lot of focus on kind of self-care and wellness for our helpers as well this year. Anything, Gwen and Catherine, that I missed?
No, thank you.
Then next steps. So our next steps as a team, and also as a school counseling advisory team, which both Catherine and Gwen are a part of our district school counseling advisory team, is continue to support new counselors through mentorship and ongoing professional development. So that won't just end this year. We'll continue to support them with mentorship through the next several years. We also want a renewed focus on counseling best practices and the components of RAMP, which Catherine touched on a little bit. There'll be more information to come in the following years, but I know we have multiple schools that are really interested in pursuing that designation and taking their school counseling program to the next level to make sure it's evidence-based and serving students the best that we can in our district. Also, just a continued alignment of school counseling supports across all tiers. That means universal. So what are we doing for all of our students with guidance lessons through collaborative work groups? So for example, at the elementary level right now, we've worked on aligning our tier 2 check and check out procedures. And next, we're really going to look at our small groups and say, are these evidence-based? How are we making decisions about which students get tier 2 supports, and continuing on that journey? And it's a really great group we have in place now to do that work. Any questions on school counseling before we head over to the next topic? Great, thank you. Sorry, my computer's taking a beat and then it goes forward several slides. All right, Hannah, you're up.
Hello, so I'm Hannah. I am the mental health care coordinator for our 9th through 12th graders. So our first semester area of focus, we have spent a significant amount of time just trying to stay up to date with our community agencies and providers everywhere, as I'm sure you have heard. There's just short staffed everywhere. We cannot find enough providers to keep up with the demand. So just really keeping in contact and constant communication with our community partners and our providers, knowing who has availability, who's seeing in person versus telehealth, who's contracted with it, which insurance panels, and then getting really creative and using telehealth as an advantage to kind of spread our referrals and who we can refer to outside of just our area, because we're just so short-staffed everywhere. We spent a lot of time individualizing the care coordination that we provide. So we have referrals that come in that are more straightforward, and then referrals that are more complex. And so just making sure that we are meeting the individual need of the student and the family, and using releases of information to communicate with the providers, to collaborate with the agencies, to communicate with Washington County Juvenile Department, with DHS, et cetera, to make sure we're meeting the needs of the family and helping them follow up in any way that they need. We spent a lot of time on staff training and consultation on mental health topics, and then really more this year than we have in the past on crisis response and direct student intervention now that we're back in the buildings. Okay, so we'll go through all of this. You guys can read it, but we have, as of January 10th is when we pulled our data, we had 228 referrals. And so just to note that we had 130 at the same date last year. And so about 100 more referrals in the same amount of time. If you look at breaking it down a little bit, we had about equal males and females that were referred to us. 70% came from our general education, 17 in special education, and also wanted to note that a lot of our students in special education also receive services through our mental health specialists. And so they're receiving a lot of direct service that way, as well as care coordination through our mental health specialists. Looking at our demographics, 55% of our 228 referrals identified as Latinx or Hispanic, 48% white, and 9 other. We combined our other races to protect confidentiality. And multiple students identified in multiple areas, and so we counted it everywhere they identified. For home language, 66% English and 38% Spanish, and again, many bilingual households. And then the breakdown of referrals by building, and the majority of our referrals came from our 6th through 12th graders. Okay, so the top 4 reasons for referrals this year were students appearing depressed, anxious, a known history of trauma, or experiencing current trauma. So those 3 were the same as last year. The 4th reason last year was stress related to the pandemic specifically. And this year, the 4th reason was students expressing suicidal ideation. So we've had a huge increase in students expressing suicidal ideation, and we'll get into that more a little bit later, but that was something to note. So out of our 228 referrals, 57% of them are currently connected to a mental health provider and seeking active counseling right now. 29% have met with us and are continuing to meet with us and been given a referral, but are still in that process of getting connected and making that call and getting something scheduled. So the 29% is where we spend a lot of our time, is continuing to follow up with those families and getting them ready to access outside mental health services. And 14% either have said no thank you at this time or have not responded to us yet. And so we're continuing to work with those families as well. These numbers are really similar, almost identical to last year actually at this time. And so we did want to note that they are staying the same, even with 100 more referrals than we had last year, and with the shortage of providers in our area. And then also wanting to note that at the K-8 level, our jobs look a little different. So Kendra spends a lot of time meeting with parents and with families and providing them psychoeducation, destigmatizing mental health, getting families ready to access mental health resources. And while I do that at the high school, more of my time is spent with students doing the same thing, either providing those brief check-ins and getting them ready, or brief therapy in the interim before they can get established with outside therapy to increase knowledge and readiness for community service. So we wanted to break down our outcomes a little bit more. So this is how Kendra and I categorize our referral outcomes. So we have a referral form, and then we collect all of this data at the end of each semester. So a level 4 or 5 means that the student or family has been connected to services. A level 3 means they're meeting with us, they're interested in services, they're accepting a resource, they just yet haven't quite made that connection with a provider. 2 is they had that interaction, but they aren't ready, and so they're declining a mental health referral at the time, but they still did accept resources. And then a 1 being they declined services. So looking at it from an equity lens, we wanted to break it down to look at our Spanish speaking households versus our English speaking households. And Kendra and I, we spent a lot of time trying to find bilingual, bicultural providers because there's just a lack of them in our area. And we'll talk about this in our next slide, but our school-based health center was closed, and so we didn't have them as a resource. So we spent a significant more time on that. But when we look at this data, we actually see that our level 4 and level 5, for those families, it was 55.9% are actually connected to services. And in English, it was 55.7 as that level 4, level 5. And so they actually are equal, which was exciting to look at, that we are meeting those families' needs. And then we also looked at it by insurance. And so private commercial insurance, 73.4% of those families are connected, while families with OHP insurance, state insurance, the Oregon Health Plan, is 59.4. And so that's showing a lack of resources in our area, with providers contracted with the Oregon Health Plan, and that families with private insurance are able to access resources easier. And so that's an area of advocacy for Kendra and I to continue to advocate for more providers in our area that are on the Oregon Health Plan. And I was going to say 58.3 of our referrals and families have the Oregon Health Plan, and 27 have private insurance. Any questions on the data piece first before we go into our challenges?
No, I'm realizing though, we're all really passionate about this work, and we're just about out of time. So we're not going to be able to cover our last 2 sections during this work session. So I would say let's finish this and then take questions, and then we'll be able to send out the presentation and maybe follow up with board members with any additional questions they have after that.
Perfect. Well, I'll just go through challenges really quick. Huge challenge, just not enough providers, especially bilingual, bicultural providers. A lack of crisis resources. Our Hawthorne Walking Clinic in Washington County had been closed for several weeks. The closure of our school-based health center. We are currently down to 1 youth contact counselor where we had 2 before. And then just reaching families during the school hours is hard. So Kendra and I try to flex our hours to be able to contact them at night when they are off work. And then for next steps, We're going to continue to work with our community agencies and providers to advocate for resources in our area, as well as provide feedback to them on what we're hearing from our families, to continue to follow up on our open referrals and increase the number of families connected to services. Use releases of information. We've been using those a lot more this year, and using the releases to communicate and collaborate with our providers and align goals and make sure we're supporting the families in all areas. And then continue to provide community engagement. We have already been doing QPR and PACS tools, and then we plan to add a tips for supporting student anxiety, as well as a substance use psychoeducation.
Great, thank you. We do have 2 more sections that we're not going to get to tonight. I'm sorry, we get us in front of an audience and we love talking about behavioral health. So thank you all for listening. I will mail out the copy of the presentation with the additional 2 sections. Please give a look at the data. Any and all questions, any feedback, any concerns, we welcome it because we always want to get better. Were there any really pressing questions at the end here about what we presented tonight?
Well, I just want to say thank you. It was very informative. I just learned a great deal. Dave, maybe you can answer this question because I know the community listens in, but where did the money come from to support the additional counselors in that? Was that from the Student Success Act, or was that part of that plus other grants? I think sometimes people they hear that we've increased it, but it's because there's different pockets where this money came from. So just really quickly.
Yeah, we were focused with our student investment account on mental health, and then around kind of instructional improvement. So those were the 2 areas that got the most of the funding. But I forget the total number. It was 7 or 8 new counselors that we hired were all coming out of the student success coaches were bought from student investment account and some other pieces too.
Yeah. Well, it's you can see the need, and you guys are just doing an excellent job. And
yeah,
on behalf of the board, we really, really thank you for what you're doing. It's needed and it's timely and it's wonderful. So thank you.
I'd like to say thank you as well. Thank you so much for all your work, and make sure you do your self-care too.
Yeah. Good point, Narcy. Very good point. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. And we're happy to come back anytime and share more. And we will give each of ourselves time limits next time we come back to get through everything. But we're always happy to come back and present what we're doing. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Dave, do we just continue to start the next meeting?
Yeah,
Or
I
do
think
are we okay to do that?
as long as you all are okay, I think we're ready to move into the next phase.
Just make sure you call the regular board meeting to order, Kate.
All right, I'll follow my script. So is Val, Mark, and Narcy, are you okay to go forward, or do you need a couple minutes?
Nope.
You're okay? Okay. Mark? Brad? I guess we can go forward. Okay. I will call the meeting of January 24, 2022 at 6:32. Okay, and I will do a roll call. Mark?
Present.
Brad?
I'm here.
Val?
Here.
Narcy?
Here,
Sonia?
Here.
All right, we are all here. The school board will hear public comments for unscheduled public appearances received through the designated form on the district website. Patrons who wanted to communicate live via Zoom should have already registered as a participant, completed the form to provide their information, and indicated they were going to provide a live comment. If you're providing your comment live as Zoom participant, please be sure to use your full name displayed in your Zoom profile. You can change that by clicking on the participants button, hover over your ID, click rename, and type in the correct information, and then select OK. Comments will be read by the district staff or delivered live via Zoom at the appropriate time on the agenda and will be limited to 3 minutes. All right, please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, we'll do introductions of audience and staff.
John O'Neill, Assistant Superintendent.
Eileen Clute, Business.
Kim Scherer, Director of Student Services.
David Warner, Communications.
Enrique Pignon, Technology.
Oh, and Kevin Noreen, Human Resources.
Lacey Pickerel, Nutrition Services.
Mark Hughes, Facilities. Hi.
So I guess that's everybody. Well, welcome and thank you for attending. Good to see so many smiling faces tonight. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight?
So moved.
Second. Discussion? All right, all in favor? Mark?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
Narcy?
Yes.
Sonia?
Yes.
And I'm a yes also. Okay, correspondence and celebration.
We're going to tackle that with some recognition coming up.
Okay, student report, Sonia?
So coming up in like the next couple of weeks, we are introducing our sparrow, and so hopefully we can raise some money for him soon. Elections will be starting. We're going to have another random acts of kindness week, and I think forecasting is starting in a couple of weeks. And then today we return to in-person learning, and there's a lot of like mixed reactions or like feelings about this. I know some people who are just really tired and exhausted and wish they were still in online, but there are also some people who are really glad that we're no longer in like the CDL, because it's just really hard to focus and pay attention and do work in class when it's online. But a lot of people are also feeling like in person is just really exhausting, and it's taking like a toll on like their mental health and stress. And I mean, then again, it is finals week, so there could be a bunch of factors in that. And that's what I have.
Any questions for Sonia? Okay, thank you, Sonia. Calendar notes.
We didn't really prepare. This week is finals week. We're excited to have kids back in class, but for right now, I don't have a lot there.
Okay. All right. So the next is recognition, and
I've got that one.
so you'll get that one.
Yep.
Okay,
I got
good.
that one.
Great.
Kate was going to do Brent and
Gotcha.
Robert.
That's where I was headed, but go ahead.
Sorry.
Okay, I'll do it, which is after the break, we received an email from one of our teachers at Harvey Clark, Della Emmerich, who wanted to recognize some of our employees. Well, everyone's truly going out of their ways right now to keep our schools in session. Della wanted to highlight some of the work these two employees were doing. Tonight, we want to recognize the work being done by Brett Way and Rob James. And here's what Della wrote. Life is really hard right now in my teaching world. The stress can be overwhelming at times. So having a cold classroom every day is added to that stress. I want you to know that I mentioned to Brent Way and Rob James that we were cold daily in the classroom. They got right to work on it. It took several days to figure out what was going on, but he would check in with me, letting me know what the progress was. what a superstar. This is the kind of above and beyond work that they do. Please help me recognize their work. In these times of stress, when others stop and help, it eases the strain. Thank you, Della Emmerich. So we want to take today and recognize Brent Way and Rob James for going the extra mile. As December came in and the temperatures dropped, they've been working extremely hard to get our heating and cooling going. So again, we just want to recognize them for everything that they do every day to keep our schools running.
Yeah.
Good job, guys.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Dave. And thanks, Brent and Rob. So the next thing is there are several acknowledgements from schools for the school board appreciation that we will share tonight.
And that is me again. So I'm going to share my screen here. So January is School Board Appreciation Month, and we wanted to take a little bit of time to express our gratitude to our local heroes, our board members. I'm getting a little note here that my media isn't going to play, so we will see how this goes here in a second. If not, I'll figure it out. I don't know, Dave, help me out there.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Okay, we'll get there in a sec. So we want to take this moment to thank Brad, Kate, Mark, Narce, Val, Sonia for all the work that you do. Your dedication, your commitment to education, your willingness to listen and understand, especially in some really divisive issues that have happened lately, your care for our students and our community, your time that it takes to do this. Again, we want to take some time and appreciate you for that. The schools have put together, there's some kind of larger pieces that we'll post up in the Grove Room, and then there's some smaller pieces that were given directly to you as board members. This first one is a art project done by, Kathy, help me out there because I've already.
It was Jennifer Coleman's 7th and 8th grade art classes.
And it's a big poster, and it's self-portraits of them in masks. It's wonderful. When you get a chance to come by the office, take it. You'll love it. It's really creative. The next one is from Dilly. You received candles with clean cotton for each of you, and this was put again. Hang on one sec. I just need to bring up the. By Danica's in one of our local businesses made here locally, and it's for you. The kids have signed the bags, so you'll have kind of some folks from each of the schools signing. Fern Hill has given each of you a little T-shirt. Joe Gale, always in need of a mask, so Joe Gale has given you masks. Student Services has kind of given some personal stories of appreciation from different students from around our district. Echo Shaw, you've got some Echo Shaw wear with the eagle. Forest Grove High, you've got kind of a pullover that they've laid out for you. Cornelius made a little video here, and Dave, is this going to fly now?
Yeah, click on it and give it a go.
Okay, here we go.
Nope. If you want to give me a second, I can share my screen and play them through mine.
Yep, let's do that, Dave.
All right. All right. Here we go.
We're not getting any sound, Dave.
Not getting any sound.
Nope.
Get off my headphones. Try one more time.
Yeah. Hi, girls.
How about now?
Today, I want to talk to you about what the school board does. Can you tell me who's in charge of our school? The principal. Right, and who's in charge of the principal? The superintendent. Superintendent. And who's in charge of the superintendent? The school board. And what does the school board do, girls? What does the school board do? What do they do? They do the calendar, the rules, and the money. Can we say, we appreciate you? We appreciate you. Say thank you for volunteering to be our school board.
All right, let me boot up our next one here.
So Dave will queue up our next one from Harvey Clark.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the service.
Then there's one more.
Thank you, school board. We appreciate you.
So cute.
Okay, there we go.
And then last but not least, we've got Tom McCall is prepping a book, kind of a book for you. So there you'll get that when you come by. And that's kind of the roundabouts our school with school board appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you. That was fun. It's always fun to see the kids participate.
Thank you. That was adorable.
Okay. Next is superintendent report.
Perfect. We'll just have a couple of things we want to go through and talk about today. First, I want to give you kind of a run through on where we're at in the pandemic right now, how things are rolling. We've got this is kind of our current epidemiology curve. I started it from this July because of doing it over the 2 years, kind of you don't get as good of a look because of this, what's going on with Omicron is just so much more than what we've seen at any other point during the pandemic. We're seeing numbers of, I mean, the high of August was 2,000 cases. We're into the 8,000s and 10,000s. So this is truly a much larger part of the pandemic than we've seen so far. This is our 7-day moving average, and this is where we're kind of tracking where we're at. Dr. Graven last week changed his forecast, thinking that it's still going to peak before the end of the, basically the end of July, the beginning of February. We should be coming down, and they're now saying it's going to go down quicker, which would be great. Currently on this curve, we're seeing it kind of flat, which is we aren't increasing and we aren't decreasing. I'm hoping that that's kind of our peak. We will see coming up here kind of where this is going. This is Washington County. Again, I started graphing it from the beginning of July till today. And again, you can just see the immense difference between the pandemic now and the pandemic earlier in the year. This is our pediatric curve, and we've seen more kids getting sick during this period of time than we've seen at other parts of the pandemic. This data actually runs about 2 weeks behind, and so this last bar is actually January 9th. So I'm anticipating, I'm not sure if we're actually decreasing with our pediatric rates, because the last 2 weeks have been pretty active. But this data lags a little bit. I'm not exactly sure why it lags, but I am kind of expecting to see those bars go up there. And then they have, this is the by age group, and they've got it decreasing here. I'm not sure it's really decreasing. I think this, when we see this data coming out for the last 2 weeks, we'll see some, I'm thinking we're going to see some increases there. Wanted to give you just a little bit of data about kind of staff. Since January 3rd, so just since we came back from the break, we've had 171 staff members with COVID or presumptive COVID. That was a different number even this morning. It changes hourly. So I'm sure it's probably wrong right now. We have a total of somewhere around 725 staff members. It depends, you know, what we're exactly counting as being our kind of full-time folks, but we're right around 725. So that means that since January 3rd, we've had about 23% of our staff out for some period of time. We have over 50 classified folks that we've gotten emergency certified. And so they're pushing in to cover classes. But the one thing is we're only covering about 40% of our absences right now with subs from our sub service. We just don't have enough subs who are taking jobs. And so the other 60% of this, we're covering from within. And so I just wanted to give you kind of an indication of what it's been like. We did start up school again today. Both the high school and the middle school are healthier. We've seen more folks coming back to work. But we'll be continuing to kind of work every day to make sure we keep our doors open and kind of go from there. Questions just around COVID, and then I'll hit my last comment tonight. Yep, Brad.
Hey, David, what's the protocol for staff coming back?
So what's going on right now is that the OHA and Washington County have changed to from the onset of symptoms, you're out 5 days until the symptoms are going away or you haven't had a fever for 48 hours. And so what happens is now most folks with COVID, it's running 6 or 7 days. It can run longer for folks too, and it can run slightly shorter. But what's happening for us is that they move through the 5-day part of this, and we're calling and checking in with them to find out where they're at and are they coming back to work, that kind of thing. Kim I think you probably have a little better handle on some of this.
I mean, you did a great job, Dave. It just varies. Some people are out the full 10 days and sometimes they're out even longer. It depends which symptoms they have. So if they have primary symptoms like a sore throat and a cough, then they have to stay out. Those are exclusionary symptoms in our normal disease plan. So the 5-day really hasn't been super beneficial for us because people still have symptoms day 5, 6, like Dave was saying.
So we're not testing them before they come back?
If they want to be tested, a lot of staff members will ask for tests. And so they're either, meeting us at a place that's, not coming into a building, but getting a test in the parking lot. Some of them test before they go. Some of them use home tests as well, and they let us know when they're positive. So we try to make tests available to most students and staff because we have them.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Again, we've improved significantly with in the middle school and high school since the time we went out, which is what we were trying to do, is get more of our staff healthy so we can keep the buildings open. And that's happened. Last thing I want to do is just point out, in the coming weeks, we're going to be hosting a series of listening sessions with lots of different community groups. Last year, we sat down a bond development committee. We went through a lot of work, looked at kind of population increases and looked at our needs for programs. And now we're coming back this spring to do some more work. Before we get into that bond development work, we've hired Brick Architecture firm, and they're out going to be setting up a series of meetings to find out how our buildings are serving different groups of people within the district. And so you'll see this flyer will be going out in many, many places in many different ways. There's a series of different affinity groups that they put together to find out how our buildings are serving those different affinity groups. There's also a general session on, let's see, open session for all families, the 8th, where we'll bring in anyone. And again, we're just trying to get information on how well the buildings are serving the different groups. We'll then gather that information up. We'll sit upon development committee. We'll begin to do some more public outreach and come back to the board sometime this summer with a package. Like, what are we really going to recommend? So that work is all started. Both David and Eileen are kind of helping lead and manage that work, but wanted to bring it up and make sure that people knew about it. And that is it for comments tonight.
Okay, any questions for Dave? All right, thanks, Dave. We'll move on. At this time, we have not received any public comment, so I'm not going to read the little text for that since we have no public comment. And I'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is made up of routine, non-controversial items to be voted for under one motion. Are there any items within the consent items a board member or the superintendent wishes to discuss separately? Okay. We will do a roll call. I need a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Okay, a second.
Arce?
Okay, discussion. All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Narcy?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Mark? Mark?
You're muted, Mark.
Okay. Is he giving a thumbs up? Okay, he's a yes, and I'm a yes. Okay, motion passes. The first presentation tonight is on support services update, and I think Eileen is going to present.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
So tonight we have our support service groups here. In the packet is our annual support services report. It provides an opportunity for our support service partners to communicate with the board each year and highlights the work that's being done. This includes facilities, custodial, transportation, and nutrition services. Overall, these groups account for about $12.1 million of this year's annual budget. And for many years, we have partnered with both Sodexo and Mid-Columbia Bus to provide our district with both their expertise and their services. Tonight, we'll start with Mark Hughes for custodial and maintenance, and then Lacey Pickerel for nutrition services, and then Melissa Castle and Brian Schulberg for transportation. Please feel free to ask them any questions that you have as we go, and I will go ahead and get the presentation started. Just a second. All right, so Mark, if you want to go ahead and start.
Okay, well, not to be outdone, Sodexo loves you guys, Forest Grove School District. Don't miss that one. I worked real hard on that. So I just came to you last month with a bunch of slides as to what we were doing. And this month, I just want to touch on, I really want to highlight the maintenance part of it. What we, you talked about Brent and Rob earlier, and, Craig Lawless, he retired June 30th. He came in and handed me his keys and his phone, and he said he's done, but he'd been with the district for 40 plus years. And Gary Lynn, same thing. The guy's, he's still with us part-time. It is just an honor to have these guys. The wealth of knowledge they have is just incredible. Mike and Brent and Nick, Dave Weber, these other guys, they've been with the district for several years, and they'll come in the middle of the night. They'll do anything I ask, and it's really nice to have that kind of dedication. Robert is the new hire, temporary position, and he has turned out to just be a gem. And so Steve Sullivan, he's the part-time that took Craig Lawless' position, and he had 30 years over at Linfield as a maintenance. So we have an excellent maintenance team. From changing thousands of filters several times a year in HVAC, motors that burn out, pumps, all sorts of plumbing problems. The kids like to destroy bathrooms, it seems. These guys are on it, and they do it for the most part with a smile. Sometimes it gets a little old, but anyway, I just wanted to say, love them. They've been a pleasure to work with the past 2 years. We've done a lot of stuff. I showed you the slides, and that was just touching on what we've accomplished this last year. From drainage solutions at Harvey Clark and Dilly, a lot of groundwork, a lot of, we did four schools light retrofit to LEDs, and that expanded to Harvey Clark as well this past summer with our own maintenance crew. And we're planning to just continue through the schools and get everything converted to LED light bulbs. This saves the district money, and it's easier on the kids' eyes. We're looking forward to doing the window repairs at, replace the windows at Harvey Clark, especially, and Dilly. They're in pretty rough shape. So thanks to Esther, we're able to take care of a lot of this. Eileen, you want to go to the next slide? So there's Mike with a shovel in his hand. That pipe burst in Dilly parking lot, and later that day I had the contractor down there. But Mike's not afraid to get out there and get dirty. You got to love this guy. And then of course Brent, he's just a ham taking a selfie there after repairing his handrail. The Neil Armstrong cafeteria, you can see the colors up on the soffit there. We're going to be getting the new furniture for it next month, delivered and set up in place on the 21st when there's no school. And then the high school with their tents. That's just some of the fun stuff we've been up against this year. Go ahead, next slide, honey. So there's Juan again. Now, Juan has a great talent. He's a good painter, and he also has the ability to teach. And due to that, those guys broke into 2 6-people crews while we didn't have kids in the school, and just cleaned everything up, patch and paint, and all thanks to everybody pitching in. But Juan, what a great leader! This guy's good. I've worked with a lot of people over the years, and he's pretty good. We continue with the COVID protocols, and custodial is still, we're currently at the staffing levels that we would be during a normal year. So they're pulling a lot of extra weight. It's not a piece of cake to be a custodian. Let's just recognize that. But I appreciate them very much. But one more person I want to appreciate before I move this on is Eileen. Now, what a great partner to have working at the school district. I couldn't be happier. And, you know, I'm glad that she is so patient with me. So with that, I'll push it on to food services. Thanks, guys. Oh, unless you got a question. All right.
Hi, everyone. This is Lacey Pickerel. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what Nutrition Services has been up to. But before we get into that, I do want to just thank the districts, Eileen, and custodial facilities, and of course the school board for our partnership as well. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do what we do for the kids of this district. So a big thank you to you guys. So I want to highlight what we've been up to. All meals have been free for all students district-wide since March 2020. So that's a huge win for us. It feels really good to be able to provide meals at no cost, and that's due to the USDA waivers for the COVID-19 pandemic, of course. We will continue with that all the way through the end of August of 2022. So all the rest of this school year and through summer 2022, meals are no charge. We have adapted meal service quite a few times since the beginning of the pandemic. In your board packet, there is a detailed kind of month by month highlight of what that has looked like. But just a brief overview, we've gone everywhere from curbside meals, bus routes, meal kits in both a 5 and 7 day quantity, serving in parks, serving meals to cover the weekend, and breakfast and lunch, and even sometimes supper program when those waivers have covered that as well. So really been able to meet the needs of whatever the current model has looked like. We've been able to continue that from the beginning of this pandemic in March 2020. This specific school year, we began district-wide breakfast after the bell program. That was already in the works pre-pandemic, and then of course everything kind of came to a halt last school year. But now that we were back in the building this year, ODE has already passed this legislation after or for this breakfast after the bell, and we are meeting that at every level. So at the elementary schools, this looks like breakfast in the classroom, which is a huge win for the district. The kids eat in the classroom with their classmates. Breakfast is given to each classroom off of a cart. And it really takes the stigma off of school breakfast by letting the kids eat kind of with their peers. And there's no more kind of identification of who needs to come to school early to eat breakfast because, you know, they might not have food at home. Every kid has the opportunity to eat in their classroom after the day has already started, which is the entire point of breakfast after the bell. So that's our elementary school. Middle school, we really kind of worked with the building, and I have to give huge kudos to Juliana over there for workshopping this with us. We have a door-to-door cart service there now. So either their IAs or our nutrition service staff, kind of whoever has the most staff for the day, we go door to door with a meal cart, put the kids right through point of sale right then and there, and they get to choose their breakfast off of the cart, almost like off of the Hogwarts Express or, you know, their airplane trolley. So it's kind of fun for the kids. It doesn't disrupt classroom more than a minute, and every kid gets to eat in the classroom. We've seen a huge success with how many more kids are eating breakfast with us this way. And at the high school, we've already been doing second chance breakfast for several years now, and we just continue that as an opportunity for them to get breakfast after the bell. Another exciting thing we're working on, Mark kind of already hinted and showed you a picture of, was the NAMS cafeteria renovation. Our facilities was gracious enough to paint in there for us. It's red and blue, the Titans colors, and then coming next month will be brand new, beautiful furniture, tables, a lounge area, and hopefully soon also maybe a mural in there too. So things we're really looking forward to. Eileen, you can go to the next. This is just a breakdown for you of what our meal service has looked like. So not including where we're at so far this school year, we have served more than 500,000 meals, all for free to the kids of Forest Grove School District since March 2020. And there's a good breakdown there for you too. And then next slide. I wanted to highlight just a couple things that you may or may not have seen already. Our top left picture here is what our modified salad bar looks like with the COVID protocols. We aren't doing self-service stations yet. So this is kind of what it would look like on an average day at our schools. The kids are still getting a variety of fruits and vegetables as an option. We just serve it to them behind the service line so everybody stays safe and they still variety. Next, carts available coming out even with snow on the grounds last year to come and get these meal kits. And then the next picture there is from our summer meal service. This summer meals was the most fun summer service we ever had because of all of the awesome funds the district had to do all of the extra programs. So here we are, we served meals directly before all of these really fun events. So families could come, grab a meal, and then these particular folks were watching The Magician, which was really fun. The bottom pictures, we did a barbecue kind of tour, I called it, this summer, where we actually went and grilled hamburgers, hot dogs, and a whole fun meal in the parks, like as a big event. So we went from park to park at all 6 sites this summer. I'm really looking forward to continuing that tradition. We had excellent turnout and families absolutely loved it. Next there, the bottom middle picture, that's kind of what it looks like for our staff to get breakfast carts ready at the elementary level. So every elementary school has anywhere from 11 to 18 classrooms that need a breakfast cart, and we get each of those ready individually. And then that last picture there, the bottom right picture, is what our bus meal service looked like. So we partnered with Midco during before hybrid last year, and we're delivering meals to 40 different locations district-wide at all these different bus stops, and Midco was gracious enough to help us with that planning and routing. And then also we were able to utilize their drivers to actually run these delivery routes. So this, pandemic meal service has really been a partnership with all of support services and the districts, and we're really, really proud to have gotten to serve that many meals at no charge. Yeah, so that's what I have for you tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions should you have them.
Right. This is incredible. Thank you. My goodness.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I love that, some of the traditions will continue on.
Yeah, we hope so.
Okay. I would like to echo our appreciation for the school board and their support of all the members of the Forest Grove School District and specifically transportation. Our drivers were excited to return, and everybody was eager to get back with their kids. And certainly we expected 21-22 to be a very bright, shining end to 2020. And then we embarked into 21, and it hasn't been all that much different, I guess. We've had a number of employees that left based on all the factors of vaccine and concerns about their health, as well as other work. So we lost 14 drivers, but we found and went and found 12 more to bring them on. So largely we've been able to maintain. Fortunately, our staff has been pretty solid during that time and stayed healthy for the most part and able to adapt to the changes. We've continued to try and support and expect our employees to follow the COVID protocols, and then tried to even make it a little lighthearted. So Melissa and her team created masks for all of her drivers so that everybody could have a little fun mask to encourage them to wear it. So that is just one sample that they used, but there were others that the one they sent to me it just said insert chocolate here. And so we just had a little fun to try and encourage people to follow those protocols and to keep themselves safe. I think you can go to the next slide, Eileen. There you can see our staff as it's maintained. That's the normal staffing. We would like to have a few more drivers, and we're still working on solidifying those. You go to the next slide. So this is quickly a view of some of the applicant flow. We've seen across the nation the applicant flow that has reduced because of COVID. In December, we were able to, with the school district, to increase the starting wage for drivers. That has brought a few returning drivers, and it has brought more interest as we work with the individuals to try and find suitable candidates, people that have the same values and will be long-term employees for us. So that has been a huge part of who we are this year, as we've strived to make sure that our people are comfortable and cared for. We are also working with the drivers, are working with the kids. Many of the students, like some of those third grade students, may be riding the bus for the first time. So there's a lot of coaching and training for the students as to what the expectations are on the bus. And Melissa and her team have become professional counselors almost, as they work with the COVID fatigue, the challenges that the drivers face, as well as encouraging them to work with the students. So largely, I think we've been off to a very good year, and that we're looking for a strong finish as we continue to go out and fill those seats as we get into springtime, and hopefully those numbers go down so that all the athletics and everything can occur as planned, and that we'll be there to support that. So that's a quick summary for Midco, unless you have any questions.
Thank you, Brian, and it's nice to see Bonnie still there driving our kids around.
Thank you.
So if there's no other questions for Brian or Lacey or Mark, that is all we had tonight for support services. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
You're still muted, Kate.
I'm sorry. Lacey, Mark, and Brian, thank you. Your commitment and grace and humor to get through the last couple of years. It's just so appreciative. And I just can't say thank you enough, because everybody's piece has been so important. So thank you. And the data was really helpful. I found it very informative. So again, thank you, all three of you, for putting that together.
Thank you, Kate.
Any other questions? If not, I'll move on. Okay. So next is action items. So this is the appointment of the budget committee members. And we had, I just want to say on behalf of the board and the district, we want to thank the 4 applicants for applying to fill the 3 vacancies on the budget committee. The interviews were enjoyable and provided insight to the applicants' backgrounds and interest in serving on the budget committee. So I will just go forward then. The district received 4 applicants for the 3 open budget committee positions. As a reminder, there are 2 3-year positions and 1 alternate position open. Informal Zoom interviews with each candidate were completed last week, and these are the recommendations. So if there's no questions by the board, I'll go ahead. Okay. I move to appoint Stephanie Rose to a 3-year budget position ending June 30th, 2024. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Narcy?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And I'm a yes also.
And
The
I'm a
second,
yes.
Wait, yeah,
Oh.
what about Brad?
oh, Brad, I forgot about you. I thought you went to sleep. Yes, Brad, what about you? You're a yes. Okay. Are you a yes, Brad?
I'm a yes, Kate, and I'm awake.
Okay. All right, you are awake. Good. All right, thank you. Sorry. The motion passes. The second one, I move to appoint Nicholas, I hope I say this right, Hafez, Hafez, to a 3-year budget committee position ending June 30th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
And discussion? Okay, Brad.
Yes, Kate.
All right, Mark,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Narcy,
Yes.
and I'm a yes also. The third appointment, I move to appoint Pete Bauer to the 1-year alternate budget commission position ending June 30th, 2022. Do I have a motion?
Yep.
So moved. Yes.
Okay, and a second?
Yep.
And discussion? Okay, and a vote. Mark,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
and Narcy.
Yes.
And I'm a yes also. And I want to thank all 4 applicants. They were really enjoyable to talk to, and I wish we had 4 positions, but we only have 3. So I thank them. The next is, what's next on this here? Now, I think it's policy update. And so we already had a first reading, and so this is a second reading and an action item. And so we need a motion to approve the April 2021 policy updates.
Well, I'll move to approve the April 2021?
21.
2021 policy updates.
A second.
Thank you. Discussion? Okay, Narcy,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
okay, Brad,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and I'm a yes also. The next action item is the superintendent 360 evaluation questions. So I need a motion to approve the superintendent's 360 evaluation questions as presented.
So moved.
A second? Okay, discussion? All right, all those in favor, Val,
Yes.
Narcy,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and I'm a yes also. The motion passes. The last action item for tonight is the Neil Armstrong Middle School roof resurface. And I'll make that motion. I move to approve the Neil Armstrong.
Is Eileen going to present first?
Oh, are you going to present something, Eileen?
If you want, you could just go ahead and go on to the action. But I'm
I
happy
wanna
to
hear
present.
about I'm sorry. You know what? I have 2 computers and I didn't pull
Well,
up
you
the-
were on a roll, Kate. You were just making motions, voting things through. You're on a roll, but I'd like to hear about the roof.
I think we need to hear about this. Absolutely. I'm sorry. I didn't want to shortchange you, Eileen. Go ahead, please.
It's okay. Thank you, Kate. So the district's seeking to complete a roof resurface and restoration at Neil Armstrong this summer. The current roof is at the end of its life and warranty. It's starting to have more leaks and damage the interior insulation and decking. The surface is eroding and deteriorating more and more each year. This restoration will extend the life of the current roof by 10 years. Garland is an approved contractor through the MICPA purchasing agreement. They have completed the site evaluation and bidder walkthrough for a competitive bidding process. We did have 4 bidders bid on the project, with Aero Roofing and Sheet Metal being the lowest bid at $786,409. The contract would be with Garland, and Garland would then contract out with Aero Roofing And then Garland would also hold the warranty with the district for the work. We would set aside 10% contingency for the project for any unforeseen conditions. That includes insulation replacement and drain replacement. We won't know what the extent of that damage is underneath until the roof is cleaned and there's a thermal scan completed. At this time, we are seeking approval from the board to move forward with the project for a total of $865,000, with the first $600,000 coming from the remaining 2010 bond interest funds, and then the rest to be funded from the general fund savings.
Any questions for Eileen?
So Eileen, I have a question. The total budget, project budget is 865. Is that, how do you get that now? Is that including to the 10% contingency?
Correct. That's the base bid with Arrow Roofing and sheet metal plus a 10% contingency. And then that allows us to be able to do that repair as it happens.
Is it 10%? Garland must figure that that's enough.
They believe it's enough.
Okay.
But again, until we get it cleaned and do that scan, we won't know for sure exactly. So we're hoping it's going to be less than that.
Okay.
But that 10% should give us enough contingency to be able to continue with the project.
What happens if they do that process, Eileen, and they find, more where it's going to be, maybe more than the 10%? I mean, is that possible?
It is.
Okay.
It is. I believe we can go 10% over the approved amount from the board legally.
Okay.
Without getting additional approval.
Okay.
But we're hoping it would be within this 10% that's already built into the budget, and it wouldn't have to go over.
Okay. I just, construction nowadays is just, and costs and everything else. It's just,
Yeah. And that's our hope right now, is to lock it in early so that we get on people's schedules. And so we're not doing this last minute and costing more.
okay. All right. Thanks.
So would this take place during the summer, Eileen?
Yes.
It would take place during the summer. And then it's a 10-year warranty?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay.
And it needs warm, dry weather for this coating to be applied onto it. So it's going to be weather dependent, and it's most likely going to be July and August.
Yeah.
Eileen, how old is that roof?
Mark?
I'll ask Mark later.
It's currently 20 years. It's got a 20-year warranty, and that's up at the end of this year. And it's been a problem. I've got several pictures if you guys want a tour of it. You just let me know.
Mark, did you say drains too then coming off that roof?
No, the drains are actually in good shape up there. So we're planning on reusing those. They cost about $2,500 each for everything, each drain, and there's, I don't know, a lot. But we've inspected them all with Garland Roofing, and they think that we're all in pretty good shape. So the plan is to not replace the drains at this time, but even if we have to replace a few, that's going to be taken up in the contingency. Yeah, it's a big roof.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is it a flat roof?
So the roof construction itself is totally flat. And then on top of that, there's foam that builds up peaks and valleys so that the water drains to the drains. So at the drain, the roof foam is like 2 inches, and then it goes up to 18 inches in places. So that it just creates the mountains. And that's where walking the roof, we really don't feel any damage, but we know that near the drains we've had leaks. And so we know we're going to have a little bit of the insulation to repair in those areas. But they do a thermal scan of it with their cameras, and they can tell if the insulation is wet or dry, or if it's damaged. So And what they do is completely wash the roof clean and then apply this new membrane right over the top. And the neat part about this is it extends it 10 more years, and it's not considered the second layer. And this roof can have a second layer. And so after these 10 years up, that warranty is up, then you can apply a second layer on this roof without tearing anything off. So it's a 40-year fix, long after I'm gone.
We hope.
About
we
that
hope.
time, the building will need to come down.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Mark. Any
Yeah.
other questions for Mark or Eileen? Are we ready for a vote then? All right.
So moved, Kate.
Yeah, okay.
No, we gotta do it right. Kathy, did you say something? No? Okay.
Yeah, we had to make a motion.
A motion in a second, please.
Yeah.
Are we moving? What was the name of the company? Garrett?
Garland.
Garland. I move that we approve the action item for Garland Construction to do the roof at Neil Armstrong Middle School for
$65,050.
Thank you. $865,050.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Further discussion? Okay. Mark,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Narcy.
D, yes.
Okay. Motion, and I'm a yes, and motion passes. So thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Mark. And the next is future action items. So there's future board items, and you can refer to that at your leisure. And if there's no further board business, I will close the meeting at 7:30 p.m. and thank everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank you,
evening.
everybody.
Thanks. Good night.
Stay well, stay healthy.
Adios.